Uber drivers, what's the deepest secrets you've overheard in your car? It's a waxy amber colored cannabis extract. Shit will wreck you. Love that show. 1. Two girls talking about how they fucked the same guy. Both agreed his dick was too big and he was hurting them by lasting too long. Both concluded he was gay. 2. Two middle-aged couples trying to agree to a foursome. Both agreed his dick was too big and he was hurting them by lasting too long. Both concluded he was gay. You just can't win, goddammit. How did they conclude he was gay? Apparently if it takes him long to come with two hot girls, of course they would think of themselves as such. Then he must be gay, lol. Edit. Here come the white knights. If he wants to have that much sex with a woman, he must be faking. You'd be surprised at how common that stupid logic is. My wife told me her and a few people thought I was gay in university because class 550 has too much sex with too many women, so he has to be overcompensating. What? So straight you loop right back around to being gay. Kinda like playing asteroids, when you go so far to the right side that you end up on the left side. Everyone here is curious about the big dick gay guy, but I want to know how this foursome turned out. It became a fivesome. Weed in the 70s had a THC content of about 3%. Weed now is up to 15-18%. Shatter can be in the 90s. When people talk about dabs, my only thought is, you are not smoking weed anymore. You're freebasing THC. But, as THC isn't an alkaloid, it doesn't have a freebase form. Pedantry. Taking a dab of BHO shatter wax crumble rosin as opposed to hitting a bowl is like taking a shot of 151 to sipping a beer. I could go on for days with these, but this one takes the cake. It's not a secret, but just one of many insane experiences. So I picked up a guy in a suit at around 6 p.m. on Tuesday near Venice, CA. He told me to take him downtown and per usual I asked if he had a preferred route and he said, no, whatever is quickest. We get going and the usual banter begins. So how long have you been driving for Uber? Me. 1 year or so. It's a great job, he says. Oh cool. Where do you stay at? I answer, in the valley, and he says, oh nice, nice. So, how long have you been driving for Uber? I paused and kind of half smiled, thinking he was fucking with me. He wasn't, so I answered verbatim, 1 year or so. It's a great job. He goes, oh cool. Where do you stay at? This repeated 3 more times before I finally answered it differently, saying I just started. It's not for me. And him again replying, oh cool. Where do you stay at? I answered one last time the original way, but then finally, silence. By this point I was on the 10 highway, stuck in rush hour traffic. I look in my rear view and he is rubbing his head and hair profusely, like someone going through withdrawals. He took his suit jacket off and looked severely uncomfortable. I dialed 911 on my phone in case shit went down. He then out of nowhere yells in a deeper voice than earlier, fuck, and I said sir, is everything alright? And he goes, where are we? I said, I'm on the 10 headed downtown. Is that still okay? He goes, yes. At this point, by the graces of the universe, we ended up moving pretty quickly through traffic. Then, right before we exit off the 10, 2 miles or so from his apartment, he yelled again, where are we? Dart. I said, sir, we're almost to your house. Is that still okay? And he goes, yes, that's fine. Once we arrive, I pull up to drop him off and he gathers his stuff, opens the door and looks back at me before walking away, and in the most genuine, kind way, says, have a great night. Watch out for crazy people. Honestly, one of the strangest, creepiest events ever. Subsequently, I bought a stun gun taser, and luckily so, as this was just the beginning of several crazy incidents. So damn glad I don't drive anymore. Edit. Wow, thanks for all the responses. I think of all the suggestions, drugs seem to be the most reasonable. Dementia is possible, but the way he was sweating and getting increasingly uncomfortable in the backseat make me think it was something artificial kicking in. I picked up this young, overly affectionate couple that spent the entire trip making out in my backseat and telling each other that they loved each other. Cute. So I drop off the couple and head on my way to pick up my text fare. I hear a cell phone ring in my backseat, realize it's my previous rides, and pick up the phone to let them know I have it and I'll come back to drop it off. Turns out it was the guy's wife phoning to check in on him while he was on a business trip, which he was thoroughly enjoying with his mistress. Did he leave you a good rating? Yeah, 5 stars and a tip. When I was going to drop off the phone I had planned to say, in front of him and his mistress, "Your wife sounds like a lovely person." I approached him with the phone and he handed me a 100. I was completely caught off guard, so I thanked him and left. My plan totally fizzled. He knew she was gonna call, too. So he leaves the phone in the Uber and has an around. Haha, so it all worked out. That's awesome. And sounds like business as usual on his end. Edit. Awesome for you, I should say. Not about to applaud the adulterous schmuck. Better question. Did you leave yourself a good rating? Uber passenger here. Had a driver tell me he was changing his name to Nilram because it was Merlin spelled backward and he was a wizard. Yeah, who knows what a wizard could have done to him. Puts on robe and wizard hat. I cast level 6 eroticism. If you spell wizard backwards, Drazi, and then use opposite letters you spell wizard. For example, A equals Z, B equals Y, C equals X, D equals W, etc. What the ever-loving fuck? No, stop please. Whoa. Once I had an extremely drunk middle-aged couple fight for an entire 30-minute ride. They attempted to bring me into their fight many times. I just pretended like I was deaf and didn't answer when they tried to rope me into it. Settle down there, Dory. Brittany, you are such a fucking slut. I saw you flirting with that guy at the bar. WTF are you talking about? We were having friendly conversation. That's it. You Timothy Miller can smell how wet you were for that guy. Right, Tim? Tim TIM, double quote, dart. Tim, tell him I'm dry. Once I had two girls and a guy declare their love for each other as friends and saying they should hang out more often when they got in the car, and by the time I dropped them off they hated each other and never wanted to speak again. My tongue was bleeding by the end of the ride from trying not to laugh my ass off. I cracked a few smiles. I wonder if they ever noticed. They were fighting over the new football coach at the local uni. Let me guess. 2 stars. Driver was sullen. No. Driver was unsullied. The unsullied show no emotion. I make joke. That was the worst joke I've ever fucking heard. There are plenty of clubs that give drivers bonuses and perks for dropping people off. It makes it an incentive to pitch a club if you already know people are headed out to a similar place. I know this is the opposite of what you asked because I'm a passenger, not a driver. I had an Iraqi driver tell me he was an engineer in Iraq before the first Gulf War and he'd developed a superior means of gilding furniture, chandeliers etc, which you can imagine was hot in pre-war Husseinville. Well, Uday wanted to go into business with him, but, and this is a direct quote, first Uday wants to be your partner in business, then he wants to be partner in your wife. Words to live by. Edit. Thanks for the gold. Don't let Uday catch you. This reminds me of the best cab ride I've ever had. Flying into Newark, I got in a cab to take me into Manhattan. I realized it was a Jersey cab and asked the driver whether I could smoke in the cab. You're not allowed to smoke in Nick cabs. He said yeah, he wants his customers to enjoy their ride, so make myself at home. 10-15 minutes later he asks if I smoke weed. I'm like yeah sure. He says well do you want to smoke some? I'm like I obviously don't have any being that I just got off an airplane. He says I have a joint right here that I was saving for after my shift. So we smoked a J and he told me all about what being part of the Egyptian uprising was like. It was pretty great. I tipped him well. Visited New Orleans for a buddy's bachelor party. The Uber driver told me he quit being an electrician to just be an Uber driver and to continue his recording studio career. He told us all about the city and the great places to go. One of the most chill drivers I've ever had. He later decided to tell us to watch out for the LGBT area on Bourbon Street and that he wouldn't mind us killing some of them trannies. Things got awkward fast and I was glad we finally got to our hotel. 0 to 100 real quick. Removed. Passenger here, not driver. I live in Nick and I had to call the suicide hotline while coming home in an Uber from work because it was only place where I could be more or less alone. I am so thankful to the driver for being patient while I was crying and saying really fucked up things. It was so obvious it was the last thing he wanted to deal with that night. My friend Ubers in my hometown picked up some really nice girls out on first Friday. They're talking about their plans for next autumn. Guy thinks he recognizes one of them. Turns out to be my younger sister and he tells me all about it. And that's how I found out my little sister was moving to Spain. AWW. Drove Uber one night. It was pretty tame until I picked up two guys who wanted to go to a strip club 40 miles away. As they requested an Uber Select fare, I was happy to drive that far. $80 100. It took them 15 minutes to get ready and into the car, and they seemed cool, so I wasn't worried. As soon as we got on the freeway, the guy in the passenger seat started asking about Uber driving and things got dark. After a few minutes he started saying shit like, what would you do if someone just grabbed the steering wheel and ran the car into the median, and have you ever thought about what would happen if someone in the backseat tried to strangle you? While you were driving, I got a little freaked out and tried to lighten the mood by asking what they were celebrating, etc. But the one guy just kept at it. I was happy to get to the strip club and get them the hell out of the car. Bonus was the bouncer at the club gave me $40 for dropping them off there. I never drove Uber again. Fuck that. Edit. And my highest rated comment ever was the result of one night of Ubering. Thank you everyone. Well, I have airbags, but the backseat doesn't. So if you do those things, I probably live and you probably die when the car totals itself in a crash. Isn't it weird how we put our kids in the back seats? But those are the most dangerous seats. Either way, enjoy sitting in the back seats. I'm a deputy sheriff. Why do you ask? This right here. Of course, if you look like a 16-year-old kid with peach fuzz, it probably wouldn't work. In a junior deputy sheriff, you can tell by the star that they gave me. Why do you ask? What makes you think I'm an Uber driver? That is freaking scary. That's when you gotta call their level of crazy, so to speak. What would you do if someone just grabbed the steering wheel and ran the car into the median? I don't know. What would you do if your Uber driver randomly jerked the wheel and ran the car into a wall? Have you ever thought about what would happen if someone in the backseat tried to strangle you while you were driving? Have you ever thought about what would happen if you said something like that to someone who might feel compelled to defend themselves? What would you do if your Uber driver drove you to an abandoned warehouse and started sticking things in your butt? You gotta get good at hypotheticals. What would you do if someone just grabbed the steering wheel and ran the car into the median? Keep a firm grip on the wheel and shot that fucker in the throat. Have you ever thought about what would happen if someone in the backseat tried to strangle you while you were driving? Slam on the brakes, get whatever they have around my neck off, pepper spray or taser, then leave them in the street. Then again, I constantly think about stuff like that and ways to get out of it. The best weapon you have is the steering wheel in your hand. I'd kill us. You just gotta route crazy then. You ever wonder what happens to the human body when it hits a solid partition at 95 miles an hour? Cause I do all the time. At the time I had similar thoughts but didn't want to provoke these guys. I knew one of them was ex-military because they were celebrating his discharge. I think they were getting high off of freaking you out. That's fucked up, man. I'm sorry that had to happen to you. What motive does the bouncer have for tipping an Uber driver? Thanks for being a public DD. Thanks for not parking in our lot. Former Uber driver here. Picked a girl up, a sweet girl from a bar on a Wednesday night. Absolutely hammered. About 10 p.m. She got into my car, apologized for being so drunk and politely asked if we could just drive around a little while, with the windows down. I was prepping for a cleaning fee, trying to drive and pull a vomit bag out of the glove box. But no, she just did that airplane thing with one hand out the backseat window. She asked me if I had ever thought about dying, to which I replied, yeah, I guess so. That's when she told me that she had cancer. It was in her brain and it was too far gone to consider chemo. I remember my heart just pounding. She told me she was dying and she was going to be okay. Tonight she was celebrating with her work friends who threw her a going away party. She told them she was taking a position abroad. I just didn't tell them that abroad was heaven. Jesus fucking Christ. I turned off my app and cried my ass all the way home. Shit. Now that's a secret. Don't open the comments below this. It'll just ruin the moment. Damn it, Reddit. You always take things too far. The best one I've read on here. So sweet and sad. Very poignant. A lot of statements of how solemn this is. But I'd like to point out that she is incredibly strong and that OP should be honored to have shared in such a beautiful moment. I saw an amazing person pass recently and the beauty and peace in their transition will have a long-lasting effect. Thanks OP for sharing this. I just didn't tell them that abroad was heaven. The fucking feels, bro. Picked up a girl mid-Saturday. She was a bit upset and a little teary and opened up to me. Turned out a business she had started was failing and she was in debt and had turned to stripping on the side to cover the bills. She said the pay was good but she kept getting real sick from all the booze she felt obliged to drink. Part of her job was making guys spend money at the bar. She hated it and felt trapped and kept asking me what I would do in her situation. I'm a guy, so kind of hard for me to answer. Tried to give her the best advice I could think of, like getting the tax office to withhold tax for a while, but couldn't help really. Only thing I could do was end the trip early. Other one was a couple of off-duty cops who didn't want their friends to know they were using it. Uber is still in a legal gray area here. Stripper girl apparently didn't know the usual trick for strippers. Usually if they don't wanna actually drink, they talk to the bartender before they open up and the bartender will give them non-alcoholic drinks for the night. Otherwise most strippers wouldn't have a liver anymore. In a lot of clubs, when you buy a girl a drink and she does not actually want a drink, they use that trick. Sell the $10 drink and the girl gets $5 and the club keeps $5. Ah, a good old-fashioned Fountain. Or a Graysdale mead. I picked up a guy from a gay bar and he was noticeably coming on to me. He then confessed that he was one of the founders of a very popular gaming company and offered me $2,000 to come up to his room. He also refused to leave my car unless I kissed his hand. Fun times. What did you do with the money? He built a shrine to Gabon. $2,000. I'm not gay but for that I might experiment. Todd Howard is out of control. Back in my cocktail server days, I was stopped by this girl, and she wanted to talk to me in the corner of the bar, out of sight of her friends. She told me that she was pregnant, but nobody knew yet, and she didn't want to tell them until she was farther along. So she wanted me to serve her only virgin drinks shots. And they were there to celebrate her birthday. I hope she enjoyed her cranberry juice, and the Gatorade G2 served in a shot glass. I'm sure she was very hydrated at the end of the night. Edit. This is far more common than what I thought. Keep on keeping on, pregnant ladies. I find this adorable. She was a sweetheart and was grateful we could accommodate her. It was just a very unique situation for sure. You are a good bartender and person. Early in pregnancy rates of miscarriage are high. She probably didn't want to tell anyone in case it happened. I think it's recommended to not make an announcement until 3 months into the pregnancy or so. It's something like 25% of all pregnancies end in miscarriage. Sadly common and not talked about very much. Edit. Lots of replies to this. I'm glad people are sharing their experiences. I posted it to a reply below, but I just did quick Google search for how common are miscarriages and WebMD. I know, was the first result, web and web page, that showed references. It's even more common than the 25% I remembered hearing. But a goldmine if you're a psychic. Wasn't really aware of this rule after 2 first try kids, of course let it out early on the 3rd one without thinking it through and she had ectopic pregnancy. Thank you, Linus. Then 7 months later all her friends think back to her birthday. If I was one of the friends, I would assume she didn't know and then secretly watch the baby for any signs of fetal alcohol syndrome. Be careful secretly watching babies, you could end up on the list. Ashla doesn't know it is hers. That's like me, I'm never satisfied. Took this 19-year-old kid and what I assumed was his GF back to her house on Pride weekend in SF. They made out the whole ride. When I dropped them off, only she got out. He said take me to Castro and 18th. I said really and he said yeah. I only make out with girls when I'm rolling. Never a dull moment in San Francisco. Do the streets here have some kind of meaning we're supposed to know about? The Castro is one of the most well-known LGBTQ neighborhoods. Even the crosswalks are rainbows. Gay. I looked it up and it's an LGBT area. So I guess the guy was gay but makes out with women when rolling on MA. I'm pretty sure you just make out with anyone on MDMA. Any person, any gender, any farm equipment, any throw pillow, your own reflection in a puddle. It's a hell of a drug. What does rolling mean? Hi on Ma. Source, 18 years old. From what I've seen at SF Pride this is fairly standard. Never overheard a juicy secret, but plenty of interesting packs. One time I had a group of 3 guys, probably around my age, mid-20s. They seemed nervous, avoided eye contact, and were pretty much silent from the moment they hopped in. I tried confirming the destination, asked how their night was going, etc., but only got muffled mumbling in return. As always, I worked the situation out in my head in a calm, rational manner. Something like, are these guys trying to rob me, jack my car? Did they just kill somebody? Am I an accessory to murder? Do they have knowledge of the impending apocalypse? But as my paranoia routine winded down, I slowly started to realize what was going on. Between the beads of sweat, occasional jaw clenching, and finally, random giggle outbursts, these kids were tripping fucking balls. Once it hit me, I called them out immediately and told them I was cool. They looked so relieved. I started blasting music, some Humphreys McGee I do believe, and they just started geeking out by that point. Fun ride. At the end of the ride, the guy that sat up front tossed me a bag of shrooms. Good times. It wasn't so much weird as it was random, but my first night driving for Uber Lyft, I picked up a dude at 2:30 AM that was finishing up a pub crawl. The dude was dressed in a purple dinosaur on Ishi and was hammered. He got in and started telling me his entire life story and how he came out to his parents and moved across the country the next day. He wants to eat peoples and some penis. Did Barney sing that? I only remember it from Raffi. Edit. Stop. I get it, people. It wasn't just Raffi. Wikipedia webpage. But Raffi did record it 7 years before that punkus purple dinosaur. I'm not necessarily hating on Barney, but Raffi's the shit. Yeah, that was definitely Raffi. Oh god. I sang that in my head. Is this in Austin? The Onishi scene in Austin is ridiculous. Till some cities actually have enough people wearing onesies to justify there being a scene. Austin has some scenes that don't exist as anything outside of Austin. I am not an Uber driver, but I have one that was told to me. This driver told me that he picked up his last fare for the day and it did not have a final destination. The dude gets in the car coked out of his mind yelling on the phone. The guy says drive to Vegas. Here, and the guy tosses $500 bucks at him. That is on top of the Uber fare, which apparently was surge pricing. So the guy drives him to Vegas. From Los Angeles takes about 4 hours. The whole time the guy's talking yelling on the phone to his mom. They get to Vegas and he drops the dude off at some mansion where his mom is outside waiting to yell at him. Apparently the guy forgot about giving him the cash because he tossed another few $100 at him. Got out of the car and split. I've heard this story before. But the dude was going to Bel Air to stay with his aunt and uncle, not to see his mom in Vegas. I have to wonder if this is just a couple on date night deciding to fuck with their driver's head. It'd be a fun thing to do. Live improv in front of an unsuspecting audience. Picked up a girl who had to go to work across town. Her boyfriend and her were arguing in the parking lot as I was approaching. Girl gets in my car and she's worried she's not going to get to work on time and she would be fired if she was late. Get about a block away and my phone rings. I answered and tried to get it off my Bluetooth stereo to no avail. The person on the other line was her BF and he said he wanted to apologize about his GF and that I shouldn't listen to her because she was a crazy BTCH. She heard all of it and didn't say a thing. Very awkward. Finally get her to work and she asks me to stay in the parking lot as she goes in and quits her job. She gets back a few minutes later and on the way home tells me that her boyfriend once broke her arm in an argument and that he was going to be very mad at her and she was worried about going back home but to take her there anyway. Ended up dropping her off and calling non-emergency, but I have no clue if anything ever happened with it. Is that right? Picked up 2 dudes. They were talking about how they were going to keep hiding their relationship from their wives and children. Pretty messed up stuff. Brockback Uber. Shit man. This got me dark. Hard. Edit. My top comment is one word. I've been trying way too dark. I already was from the purple dinosaur. Meter at the speed of C. Oh man. Something relevant to me and I'm late. I had someone get in my car, told me he's in his late 20s and that he's having sex with a girl who just recently turned 18. I awkwardly told him that's good for him and he proceeded to tell me that it's not, that his life sucks and everything he does to make himself happy doesn't work. He told me he watches vids of people committing suicide and wishes he had the courage they did to go through with it. He told me he's going to go to San Francisco and spend every last penny he has on vacation and just jump off the Golden Gate Bridge when he's done. I didn't really know what to say. When I dropped him off I told him that I hope things start looking up and he just said they won't. They never do and left. He also asked weird questions like if I hit you would you kick my ass. When I said I'd rather no one hit anyone he said dude, you'd whoop my ass, I'm a fucking piece of shit. Hope he got help. Depression is brutal. The worst part about this is that's what a lot of people with depression feel like inside. Just very few of them express that to anyone else. Oddly enough, that's actually a point toward this guy making it. If you express what you feel, people might help you. Most suicidal depressives just quietly kill themselves without much fanfare. Not that I expect it to happen again. But if this type of thing ever comes up again, make it clear that it sounds like a medical problem that doctors might be able to help with. A lot of clinically depressed people assume it's just them and there is no help, or that if there is a problem it's not something a doctor can help with, mostly because they don't know they've got clinical depression. Not my story, but I had an Uber driver tell me this one, so I hope it counts by proxy. Uber driver George is doing Uber pool one night in Austin where you pick up multiple people en route to the destination. First girl number 1 gets in the car alone and sits in the back seat on the passenger side. Then a couple, guy and girl, comes, and there's not enough room for everyone in the back, so girl number 2 sits behind the driver and guy sits up front. The two girls in the back start chatting and seem to be getting along well. Girl number 1 asks what they're doing tonight, and girl number 2 says, "Oh, me and my boyfriend Josh are going out to celebrate. Josh works at XX and just got a promotion." At this point, George notices Josh is crouching down in his seat and looking guilty. Then, girl number 1 says, "That's funny, my boyfriend is also named Josh and works at XX. I wonder if they know each other." Then girl number 2 starts tapping her boyfriend on the shoulder and bugging him to turn around to meet girl number 1. At some point Josh can't avoid the introduction anymore, and is forced to turn around. He does so with a look of utter horror on his face, as it slowly dawns on both girls that they're dating the same Josh. Anyway, both girls start screaming and kick Josh out of the Uber. Not sure what happened after that, but you can bet Josh never took Uber pool again. Not so much a dark secret, as much as a potentially dark situation. Driving around waiting for pings. Get one at a popular bar. Pull up and a young woman flags me down. Gives me her name. Asks for mine. I'm her ride. Easy enough. There's a guy with her. They're both quite drunk. She says goodnight to him and gets in the rear passenger side door. Homeboy isn't having it. Decides he's coming with. Starts trying to convince her, despite her saying she has work early, wants to get to sleep, but he's not taking no for an answer. It's getting a bit weird as he's getting more and more pushy aggressive about it, to the point that she's clearly uncomfortable. I step out of the car, and say over the top of the car, "Hey man, if she says you're not getting at the car, you're not getting in the car." He looks over at me with hate in his eyes. I'm a bit tense, not knowing this kid's deal. He slams the door, walks away, talking shit as he goes. "Really? Talking shit as you walk away? What a hard ass. Get back in the car." Girl seems a little more sober after the experience, and is shaken up over it. Take her back home. Make sure she gets in safe. Not as scary or as weird as it could have been, but the dude gave off a bad vibe and I'm glad he took the hint and fucked off. As a female, thank you for that. I bet she was terrified. 2 40-something guys who I picked up from a bar were talking on a phone speaker, and they were trying to make plans with a third guy who was at a party with a bunch of drunk 12th graders. Exact words. One guy in my car asked if there was anyone younger there. Other dude said, "Dude really?" Followed by silence. Then he said, "Fucking sweet." Not sure as there was missing context, but it sounded like there was younger teenagers there already drunk and these older dudes were going to pick up. Dude, isn't that some say something reporting to some authority worthy shit? Or they were cops about to get fill up their underage drinking arrest quota straight through to the end of 2017. Not sure why they were taking an Uber though, because they're not cops about to fill up their underage drinking arrest quota straight through to the end of 2017. It's a bit of a gray area. I've worked in social services a bunch and I used to be hypervigilant when out in the community, but I learned that without solid evidence of bad behavior and identifying details of the individual, you probably aren't helping much. Imagine a cop's reaction when you call to tell him that a few guys who you don't know sounded like they might try to have sex with girls that could be drunk and maybe underage, somewhere near where you dropped them off a few minutes ago. I'm not saying don't try to be a good Samaritan, but be realistic. Actually, the best thing to do, if you can keep yourself safe, might be just to call people out on their immoral behavior. Thanks Pasai on Rai. "We can't do anything until something happens," is the response I got when I called the police for a situation that was about to escalate to knife levels. "We would have come earlier but your husband wasn't dead yet." Was one of them Sarah Trant? Two dudes discussing how much fun they had at one of theirs bachelor party. The fun consisted of the most cocaine I've ever done, and I can't believe I fucked a prostitute right before I got married. Speed of the D. Were their names Sol and Robert? Grace and Frankie? Anyone? Not a driver but a passenger. This is my story. I get picked up at around 2:15 AM after the bars. Older man. White Volvo station wagon. It's a pretty long drive, so I figure I'll talk with this guy. I ask him what credentials you have to be an Uber driver. Him. Background checks and all that. Me. Probably for the best day. Wouldn't want any nutballs driving people around. Him. Almost as if he didn't even hear what I said. "Yeah, I'm a registered sex offender though. Don't worry though, it's only for little girls." Me. Aha. Him. "You know who I really like though? Philip Seymour Hoffman. He was a true legend." Proceeds to talk about PSH for 15 minutes straight. Me. Aha. Him. As we get close to my house. "Oh, I know that hill. I like to park there and watch the girls walk home from school." Me. Aha. Me. As we pass my house. "Yeah, just a few more blocks that way." Reported him to Uber. They said they would look into it. Never heard about it again. Edit. In regards to the replies, I think there is a significant chance he was fucking with me, but I reported him anyway to err on the side of safety. So much for background checks. You should look up Taxicab Confessionals. It's a whole show about this from the 90s, and it's amazing. Also, someone should totally reboot this into Uber Confessionals. I remember this show on HBO. 12-year-old me was dumbfounded on a boring Thursday at 11 PM when I flipped the channel to see this random couple talking about all the crazy places they've had sex. And then the chick jumps on the guy and starts banging him right then and there. Home boob office living up to its name. Or fake taxi. God, that show. The one I remember was the girl who had gotten her clit pierced. Back then that was the most exotic thing I'd ever heard of, and she talked about the random orgasms and that she had one while talking to her grandfather. Cured me of ever wanting that kind of piercing. For me it was the part where someone puts a needle anywhere near my clit. Is that why girls won't have sex with me? Edit. You guys are correct. It was a needle dick joke. But is the joke my needle dick? Or is my needle dick a joke its birth? One time I was driving a dude for a bit of a long trip, was gonna take around 25-30 minutes. He wasn't hammered, but definitely a bit drunk. It was late and he must have been feeling a bit down. So he confided in me and asked me for some advice. He told me he's madly in love with his fiance's best friend and he couldn't back out now. He'd been with this girl for years, and engaged for one. Ready to be married in a few months. It was pretty sad to hear, because it wasn't just your average story. It was filled with a lot of subtle emotional and mental anguish. The guy went through about 5 years of ups and downs with his girl, and found an innocent friend and comfort in the best friend. After a few years, he developed feelings and it was just downhill from there. Felt bad for the guy because he seemed like he was truly in love with his fiancée too. Although he had strong feelings for this friend, he knew that going through with the marriage meant a lifetime of being around the friend and suppressing feelings. But also breaking it off meant that he lost the girl of his dreams. Seemed like a genuinely nice guy, and I hope he's doing okay. Sometimes monogamy can be good, sometimes it hurts. Isn't that a type of wood? Edit. Ruined my joke with a typo originally. Monogamy is a frustrated wood. And still, very hard. This is why you must stay monogamous. What advice did you give him? It was tough, because the more I asked about it, the more tied it seemed his hands were. He was surely in love with his bride-to-be, but he couldn't deny the other feelings. I mean, what would you do? What advice would you have given? I'd tell him to learn to love her differently. He can love being around her, and love everything about her, but he doesn't have to love her romantically. If you love a flower, don't pick it up, because if you pick it up, it dies, and it ceases to be what you love. So if you love a flower, let it be. Love is not about possession. Love is about appreciation or show. I would have told him to stick with his first love. If he stuck with it and was truly dedicated, things could work out well for both of them. If he breaks it off with his wife-to-be, there would be some turmoil caused between the best friend and the fiancé. That's a really hard position. But it's best to stick with the one you originally chose. There's a reason he chose her to begin with. He just needs to find that reason again. Yeah, the reason was he hasn't met a friend yet. It's so sad to belong to someone else when the right one comes along. Worse yet, to have left the right one thinking that there is someone better out in the world. Been 6 years, have not found them. That's my issue as well. I had this perfect woman constructed in my head, and nobody met that standard. It helped to actually think about individual qualities of this perfect woman that I thought I was striving for, and it turned out that I didn't really even know what qualities those were except a few basics. Made me realize that I'm missing out on a lot of opportunities with great women because I was looking for something but not even knowing what I wanted. Does that even really make sense? Haha. Was his name Alexander Hamilton? Because he will never be satisfied? I'm sure I don't know what you mean. You forget yourself. The fucked up part is how common this may be, and that there's such a simple solution to prevent it. Cultural acceptance will improve the lives of many, gay and straight. Cheating is cheating no matter the orientation. That's sidestepping what they're trying to point out. Yes, cheating is fucked up, and it doesn't matter the orientation, but what they're saying is cheating from closeted people could be greatly decreased, possibly non-existent, in our Western society, the us, if we actually just accepted them for who they are. Change the Western society to the us figured it'd just be easier to say. Also, if you don't believe that there's homophobia in the us, just bring up some gay issue with the right-wing family and see it's far too common around the us still. Not my story but my mom's. She does rides in San Diego, which is a city that loves its Navy and is where future SEAL go to. But my mom was telling me one time that she gave a ride to a young man about 20 years old. He had been fighting to become a SEAL his whole life and ended up falling asleep on the last day or two of buds and getting dropped for the season. He was just crushed because he made it through everything before and now he would have to wait before being able to enroll again and would be starting from scratch. Anyway, during the ride he started to open up to my mom about his other passion, which was medicine, and she suggested he chase that dream instead because he came off as a very caring and devoted person. At the end of the ride he asked her to step out of the car so he could give her a hug and a huge thanks for lending an ear and giving her honest opinion about the situation. He also left her his phone number so he could give her a call and let her know what he decided to do. A few days later he gave her a call and said he had returned back home to Texas and would start taking courses to pursue a career in medicine. Picked up a drunk guy on St. Patrick's Day. He was talking about his boyfriend and asked me if he should break up with him for being a money-grubbing whore. He then proceeded to tell me about the two dudes he was going to cheat on his boyfriend with that night. Just a weird set of conversations. Late to the party, but I once drove some well-dressed Russians in between bars on the west side of Chicago. I used to work for a Russian-owned cab company and I understand a little Russian, and I heard two of them talking back and forth about something one of them was very anxious about. The phrases that jumped out at me were, "This is death. This is serious. Blood is on me. And I'm not a bad man." The other guy was mainly just telling him to relax a lot, and telling him there are no fools here, or something along those lines. Upon dropping them off, like an idiot, I temporarily blanked that I had just heard parts of a seemingly harrowing conversation, and I said L, which is pronounced Dobroy Nochi and means good night. Only one of them heard me, the older guy telling his colleague to relax, and he just stared at me. Then he came around to my window while reaching into his coat pocket, which scared me shitless. He then pulled out a $100 and said, in English, "My friend, do we understand?" I just took it, shook my head in the affirmative, and drove off. I didn't take any rides for the rest of the night. Former Uber driver and current taxi driver here. One of the things that I didn't really expect from this job is that I feel like a bartender at times. People will just vent to us. Maybe it has to do with the fact that we're an anonymous here and people feel comfortable telling things to a third party. Whatever the case, a couple stick out in my memory. One was as an Uber driver in North Jersey, picked up this girl and her brother. They had been out celebrating her birthday. Brother is completely wasted and she is sober. He gets in the back of my car, passes out and she sits in the front. The ride starts and we make small talk. Apparently, her brother and her boyfriend had taken her out for her day, but boyfriend got mad at her and went somewhere else, and brother decided to get shit-faced immediately, so she had to take care of him. It ended up being a shitty day. On top of that, she told me her boyfriend was verbally abusive and made her feel really shitty all of the time. I basically said stuff along the lines of, you need to watch out for your own happiness and your so should be making you happy. Otherwise I don't see the point in having a so. She started crying buckets and told me how her entire life, she never realized that. She always just assumed that boyfriends' husbands have the right of way, as she put it, and that she never even considered that she should be happy in a relationship. Maybe that stuck with her and she's moving on to better and happier things. I'd like to think so. That ride ended with me helping her drag her brother out of my car and up the steps to the house. Second one. Now I'm a cabbie on Long Island. Pick up these two women, mid-20s-ish, and bring them to a restaurant. We were on the way there and we start chatting and the topic of depression and suicide comes up. One of them was in school to eventually become a psychiatrist. I, myself, deal with depression and anxiety, and I also have a history of suicide attempts, and I speak openly about it when the topic comes up because I want a stigma of mental illness to go away. Anyway, I drop them off and they ask for my name so they can have me as a driver later. A few hours later, the dispatcher sends me back there to pick them up on a drive request. Sweet. I pick them up and we're heading back, but the mood in the car has drastically changed from earlier. It was pretty much silent. I figure maybe they're tired or whatever. Halfway home, one of the women asks if she can ask me about my depression and suicide attempts. And although it was kind of an odd question, I go along with it for the reasons I stated above. Now she's visibly upset and she confesses that one of her best friends killed herself a few days before. No warning signs or anything. Without too many details, I basically said that that's actually not uncommon, as some people who attempt suicide don't want their friends or family to know how they're feeling. This is one of the reasons I would like to see the stigma surrounding depression and suicide go the fuck away, so she shouldn't feel guilty about it. Then she confesses that she was having suicidal ideation herself and had nobody to talk to about it. So I basically said it's good that she's talking about it now, and she should, because this is not a thing that can be fought one-on-one. I even gave her my phone number so that she could talk to someone who knew what she was dealing with. I also gave her the number for the suicide hotline and told her she should contact a mental health professional. I never did hear from her again, but I really hope she went and got some help. Shout out to our depression and our suicide. If anybody out there needs to talk to somebody about this stuff, feel free to PM me or hit those subs. Edit. Just realized this needs a TLDR. Helped a woman realize she deserves to happy in a relationship and another deal with suicide depression. Edit. Thank for the gold. Kind internet stranger. Not so much secrets as they were things people don't normally say or do in front of strangers. Picked up a divorced father whose buddy paid for his Lyft ride to the bar. Why? Because he was supposed to see his kid that evening for an overnight, but the wife had the authority to dictate the terms of him seeing his own child no matter what, and she wasn't feeling it. Granted, I definitely got one side of the story, but it was fucking terrible to see a man who desperately wanted to spend time with his kid be completely blocked from it over bullshit. California had given ads so little rights, from how this guy described it, that even though he had a stable job, good house, and was willing to pay for a hotel so he and his son would stay in the town the mom lived in, it was a no-go. That was a tough one cause I was so powerless to help. Picked up a girl to take her straight from work to the hospital to see her dad. Her mom had called her work to make her end her shift early because it was serious. Her dad had cancer. I dropped her off and was like, God, I hate this job cause I'll never know how her night ended. Wrong. Next night, I'm taking people home from bars and her two guy friends took her out to get wasted cause her dad had died. They were being drunk idiots. So when I took them to get pizza, she came outside and we talked about it a little. That was probably the one ride where I felt I had a positive impact on someone's life beyond getting them home safely. I was taking two couples home. Dropped off couple number 1 and the husband of couple number 2 was in the front seat and made a comment I didn't hear. Apparently he insulted the wife of couple number 1. His wife's BFF. The wife in couple number 2 didn't like that, so she hit him. Not like a playful slap. She struck her husband. Straight on domestic violence. I laid down the law. We're not going anywhere as this is how it's gonna be. The dude was drunk on tequila. Chick was drunk too. So the ride home was him asking me how would you feel and me saying it's not about how I feel. You two need to discuss this tomorrow when you're sober. It's weird. Man, you get a passing glimpse into people's lives and loved it and hated it at the same time. I love your sense of command and authority in the last one. Also good guy vibes from the first two. Hope karma's been good to you. I will turn this car around and go back to the bar unless you can get along. God, I hate this job cause I'll never know how her night ended. Wrong. Next night, I'm taking people home from bars and her two guy friends took her out to get wasted cause her dad had died. They were being drunk idiots. So when I took them to get pizza, she came outside and we talked about it a little. That was probably the one ride where I felt I had a positive impact on someone's life beyond getting them home safely. Damn dude, we need more drivers people like you. Lyft driver here. Had a guy talk about going down on a stripper while I was taking him and his buddies to a strip club. Get all the STDs. Strippers don't let just any men go down on them. You have to be special. Special equals no cold sores. A lot of money in your pocket and much courage. Found the programmer. You may have picked up my brother. That sick fuck. His cream is no longer fresh. Not quite the question. But I feel very sorry for the Uber driver who had to drive my drunk ass home while my ex railed into me for changing the karaoke song he was going to sing. I was crying and he was screaming while subtle jazz played through the speakers. I'm very much glad he's an ex. I had an in-depth conversation about first times in the drive-thru at Jack in the Box with a girl who just lost her virginity in a one-night stand with a dude she had the hots on. I turned off the meter and added her on Snapchat. We became mega bros immediately. That's an awesome bonding moment to tell the grandkids. Drove for Lyft in Denver, CO between jobs this summer. My third PAX ever, and he was going to the airport. He said he was moving to Florida to get away from it all, but didn't have any luggage, not even a carry-on. I wasn't going to say anything about it, but my curiosity got the best of me. So, where's all your luggage? Did you ship everything ahead of time? He doesn't say anything right away, and just as I was deciding that perhaps I wasn't going to get an answer, nah, I just had my friend call me a Lyft and he set up my flight. I just escaped from prison but we look so much alike. It will work for me to travel. I was quiet the rest of the trip. I drove a lot of college-aged girls that were looking for had a sugar daddy. They wanted 30-year-old men. No children. Good job. Willing to buy them lots of things, pay rent, bills. I had no idea this was so popular, but practically every girl that age that opened her mouth about a guy in my car went on about his age, job, and money. One girl even admitted to fucking someone with the same name and of the same age as her dad. I am 30 in Palo Alto myself. Can confirm that everyone under 30 has a 4 Series. Those that are older have Teslas. It's pretty ridiculous how far removed from reality this town is. My husband had a couple that broke up in the backseat of his car while driving for Uber. The woman made fun of her boyfriend's ex and was talking about how she had bad teeth. The boyfriend said her teeth were fine and that she was being really judgy. She then asked him if he was still in love with his ex. He thought for a moment, said yes, and she started crying. There was some kind of confusion about where to get dropped off since she just wanted to go home and he wanted to go somewhere the opposite direction. Super awkward for my husband. My dad was a taxi driver for around a year. He once picked up this woman with 2 children. The woman put both kids in the car and ran back in to grab her pushchair. My dad drives off thinking that she was in the car and starts to talk to her. He then realized, oh fuck, she's not in the car. He drives back and it turns out she was on the phone to the police saying a man drove off with my kids. He got back and she was fine and they laughed about it after. Just the other night a girl climbed in the back seat with her bag on the way to the airport. She was on the phone with her boyfriend and they were having a bit of a tiff. Apparently she was about to board a one-way plane to go move in with him. Ended up driving her back home after going all the way there, her in tears, as they had apparently decided maybe living together wasn't such a good idea. Trouble is, I forgot to turn the stereo back on and couldn't just turn on music in the middle of her phone conversation, so I tried my best to listen to the air conditioning fan in silence both there and back. Made myself a cool $26. I picked up this one guy who told me all about his anal warts. Apparently, they were simply huge. Sounds like a pain in the ass. There you are. Dad, did you touch it? They're referencing this SNL skit. Taxicab Confessions. SNL transcript tonight webpage. My passenger whispered to his partner. I overheard him say Mariana Trench. He was just trying to explain how deep he was going to plow her later. How many gay dudes and drug dealers can fit into your sedan? You forgot the cheating husbands with sob stories too. Edit. Oh, and Ashley and Emily. Fuck those bitches. Fuck you, dude. Emily is pregnant. I picked someone up here in Memphis and took them to a shady apartment. They came out smelling like some really good kush. I asked them to go back in and get me some. Got paid. Got weed. And got a new dealer out of it. I love how well your username fits into this story. I had a guy ask if I knew anyone who could sell him some cocaine. I just pointed to my 1-year NA tag on my keychain and said sorry. No, I don't. Not anymore. He said I was lame, but he did give me a $10 tip. I haven't really heard anything too juicy, but so far my favorite was this one. I picked up 2 guys in downtown La. From their conversation I gather they just met at the bar I picked them up from and were going home to hook up. One was younger and clean cut, the other was older and rather scruffy. So I'm driving up Main Street to the 101 and the scruffy guy starts talking about how he used to live there in the 90s and it was a whole lot scummier back then. He mentions he used to have an older boyfriend back then. The boyfriend would call the scruffy guy and tell him to walk down to the sidewalk in a tied-off shirt and Daisy Dukes. Then the boyfriend would drive up in his car and the scruffy guy would lean in his window and the boyfriend would ask him how much, and the scruffy guy would get in and they'd role play that he was a prostitute and the boyfriend was his John. The clean-cut guy kinda glossed over this and moved the conversation along. But I thought to myself that scenario sounds hot as hell. I thought this was a girl. So a dude was wearing a tied-off t-shirt and Daisy Dukes. That would be a sight to behold. I hope he had cowboy boots. You never know what you'll find in La. Way more common in La than you'd expect. You haven't lived until the gay hooker in the bee costume hits on you. Not an Uber driver, work for a smallish cab company. We have a contract with schools in the area to transport seniors to this graduate program so they wouldn't drop out. Usually criminal or bad behaved kids, etc. Anyway, I was assigned to this one kid from sophomore year. Heard some fucked up things from other students about him, like he fucked a guy in public, fucked a dog, so on. He was usually quiet. Most conversations I started with him kinda just ended from awkward silence or him just ending it. One year he starts being more confident around me. Told me loads of fucked up things. Mom abused him. Stole college money. Raped few years ago. Most bad things I heard about him were he was gay and he said that was about that, etc. After that he tells me about his drug endeavors, I guess you'd call it. He actually gave me some seeds for growing for free. Last year I knew him, he was getting with a lot of girls from the school. Every day had me drove him with different girls. Eventually stuck with one. Told me about how some of these innocent girls did some crazy shit with him. Disappeared halfway through the year. Overheard from other drivers he killed himself. Overheard from other drivers he killed himself. This is one of those lines that really shifts the entire story. Damn. Not my story, but I asked a friend to tell me his that he has shared with me before. I was once driving for Uber and picked up 2 young Spanish guys, 25 maybe. They were clean cut, spoke English very well and were really polite. The first thing that seemed off was that both decided to sit in the back, when typically one of 2 people would usually ride shotgun. It was quiet for a bit after the usual small talk I made, and then they started speaking to each other in Spanish. I know some Spanish, but I wasn't really trying to listen in on their conversation. But with how quiet they were speaking, I decided they were trying to be secretive, so I started doing my best to eavesdrop. This became kind of easy because they started getting louder and it was obvious they were arguing. Now my Spanish is piss poor, but I think kept hearing me, you, they, where, and location. I'm not sure what the one finally said to the other, but they stopped arguing and that's when I heard you get out. And the Spanish form used was a to command, which I had learned in Spanish was a very disrespectful way to speak to someone. Then there was a lot of arguing where I could only really hear get out and I paid for a short while. Finally they stopped and one of them said very politely, my friend forgot his date tonight. Could you please let him out here so he can walk home before we get further away? I was conflicted, but I complied with his request and decided I must have been interpreting their conversation wrong. The one getting out thanked me for the ride, apologized for the inconvenience, said one more thing in Spanish to his friend before he left. After that, I thought I had definitely misunderstood them. But then, the dude asks if I can change the destination, saying his plans have changed now due to his friend's date. I said of course, now getting very suspicious but trying to tell myself I was overreacting. It was a long drive, longer than the first destination, and we began to leave town. Finally I pull up to this old farmhouse that looked abandoned but figured it must have just been his place and was a bit shabby, but when the guy got out, he didn't walk toward the house, he just kinda stood there and said bye, being suspicious. I drove off down the road for a while before turning back around and I saw that the guy was walking along the side of the road toward a small graveyard, a decent ways away from the house. I didn't slow down because I didn't want him to think I was snooping, or even notice it was my car. I'm not sure what happened, but I'm pretty sure there was something waiting in that cemetery hidden somewhere, and as soon as his buddy told him where it was, he cut him out of the deal and made him get out, and there was nothing the one getting out could do because he wasn't the one paying, and I think he may have even been scared of the other guy. Weirdest night of my life. Weird, not sure where you drive, but in Chicago pretty much everyone always sits in back, only ride shotgun if there is 3 or more getting a ride, assuming it's not an XL vehicle. I hate sitting in the front. You're not my buddy, you're my ride. I don't wanna chat, just get me home for fuck's sake. Was thinking the same when I read that, but I'm also from Chicago. Between people who are well acquainted with one another, friends and family and even some who are not, young people of the same general age, TO isn't considered rude at all. When addressing an older person, a stranger, or informal situations then you may want to use usted. Depends on the situation and the circumstances, of course, but, yeah, weird shit. Maybe he was a necrophiliac and his friend forgot lube. The guy actually literally lost his date, as in the fruit. They were arguing about where to buy them, and you passed the shop that they eventually agreed sold the best dates. The guy got out to buy them, expecting you to wait for him. The guy still in the car told you to turn around to get him back, but he got lost. He's using Uber because he doesn't know his way around the city. He thought you knew where you were going, but got more suspicious after you left the city. He asked to get out near the cemetery because he thought you were going to do something sketchy. He walked into the graveyard because he saw you snooping, and wanted to lose you. Drove for about 6 months. Pick up an older couple middle of rush hour, middle of downtown, middle of a snowstorm, 3x multiplier. Man on his cell and his wife in a rush. We needed to go north to get to their destination. We were about 5 blocks away. We are stuck in traffic and the wife tells me to make a left. I tell her mom if we go that way that street doesn't go straight, it eventually curves and is going to take us south. It's going to take longer to get where we need to go. Lady says I know where I am going, just turn. After asking her like 3-4 times I finally said okay and make the turn. A block or so later the street curves and now we are going south the total opposite way. She then says where the fuck are you going? You are going the wrong way. You are trying to take advantage of us. I said mom I told you we shouldn't have turned. I asked you 3 times and you told me to turn, so I turned after telling you it was the wrong way. The lady starts just going ballistic, yelling and cussing and saying I was going the wrong way to rob her because of the multiplier. The husband was on the phone the whole time and says let me call you back. Hangs up, then says, we wouldn't be going the wrong way if you learned how to keep your fucking mouth shut. Then he says when will you learn to just chew at the fuck up? He then says, buddy this isn't your fault, this is my fault. I married this woman 20 years ago and should have just put a gun in my mouth a long time ago. Then they just started going at it. The woman told him maybe I should have put the gun in your mouth for you, and then they were just yelling back and forth. I finally get back on the right street, get them to their spot. It took over an hour. Ride was about $70. The whole time they are just yelling. I just raised the radio and let them go at it. They went at it the whole hour non-stop. When I get them to their spot, they stop yelling mid-sentence and say in the most eerily calming way possible, you have a great day. Thank you. It was crazy. Not while driving Uber, though I've done some of that in addition to taxi. Small town. Own a taxi company. Make money off of Uber as a monopoly. Collusion is still alive and well. Anyway, the story. I was driving a couple of drunk friends and the one guy was lamenting being in his dorm with this girl he thinks really wants him but he doesn't know how to approach it. He says her smile and everything drives him crazy. He really wants to have sex with her, but he doesn't know how to really go about it because it could go all wrong. He looks for confirmation in the green light by sharing his story. His best friend says, "It's not that simple. You see, it's his cousin. He wants to fuck his cousin and it's going to be bad." He explains that yes, in fact it's his cousin, but they grew up differently. She's really hot, and he really wants her, and it's not actually as bad as it sounds because she's a married-in cousin. Actually only like a half cousin. I never even worried about trying to mind bend how that would be possible or not. I conclude that he's probably going to have some bad days ahead of him at family reunions if he pushes forward, but just for the hell of it encourage him to make the move. Maybe he gets laid ? By his cousin. I had a guy tell me how his brother died, and it was ultimately his fault but everyone thought it was an accident. He moved from Russia to the US and doesn't talk to any of his family anymore. Edit. He was a teenager and thought a pistol was unloaded but it wasn't. He made it look like his brother shot himself. At least that's what he told me. I thought the prompt read, "Scuba divers, what's the deepest secret you've uncovered?" and I'm slightly disappointed this is not what I came into. You're welcome, scuba divers. What's the deepest secret you've uncovered? AskReddit webpage. I was the passenger. This driver was so large that he spilled over the armrest in his Cadillac, leaving little room for my cousin in the front. We were going to a wedding, and my wife made some joke about one of the guy cousins dressing up as a woman. The driver chuckled and launched into a story about going to Mexico with some friends and visiting a hooker, which quickly shocked us into silence. "Gary goes first," he said. "Then I go, and when I'm in there I find out she's actually a man." I thought this was somehow the punchline, but I was wrong. He continued, "The funny part is, me and Gary don't tell Bill, who went last, so he goes in thinking it's a girl." Haha, we all spent the final few minutes of the ride in pained silence. 4 stars. A few weeks back I picked up a woman from UT Arlington and drove her to DFW airport. We got stuck in traffic heading to the airport so we started chatting about this and that. We started talking about our jobs and it turns out she was affiliated with an WNBA team from the Midwest. Her team had just beat the Dallas WNBA team by a sizable amount and was quite happy to share some info with me. She said she loved her job, traveling, doing something she loved, basketball, but she hated some of the players on the team. Divas, she called them. Said a few players treated her like shit and as a personal assistant, which she claimed she was not. As long as those bitches keep winning, I can deal with them. They are such sore losers. She laughed at that. I just chuckled along with her. Afterwards, I admitted that I didn't even know Dallas had a WNBA team, let alone any other major city. She smiled and told me she hears that a lot in all the cities she visits. So, while not the craziest thing ever, I still thought she was a memorable rider. Kind of cool, I think. Edit. Affiliated is more vague than what I had before and removed city. Drove Bill Gates on the Lyft platform. He has an iPhone. Pixar it didn't happen. Well, he certainly won't use Windows Phone. Met one of the presidential surgeons for Reagan Carter, still cleared to work at Walter Reed. Lots of intelligence officers, civilians flying in out of Dulles. I go to university in the area, and drive all around DC metro area. I think people around here open up a lot more to the young white driver, but that's a whole nother topic. Really wish OP had put a serious tag on. Now I have to comb through a bunch of bad jokes from nerds who try too hard to be funny. The founder of one of the biggest tech companies in the world is gay, or bi, and not out. How do I know? I dropped him and his boyfriend off at a gay club 2 years ago. Edit. I won't be outing him though. I drove Uber and Ember for a couple months, but the singular event that forced my retirement happened on a classically Colorado night in late December of last year. Cold, snowy, everyone stoned off their ass. I wasn't planning on driving in such miserable conditions. I'm a shitty enough driver as is. I have no confidence in my abilities nor should anyone else. I find the need to mention that the only reason I Uber people around was because I lost my job at Chick-fil-A because of some "can I speak to your manager" bitch who wanted fat-free ranch. Despite my insistence we didn't fucking have fat-free ranch. Anyways, I got bitchy at the bitch and got fired, which finally showed me that customer service probably isn't a good job choice for a loving asshole like myself. but I'm chilling at my apartment and the heating at my place was broken because Sean the Dumbus landlord was too busy catching up on Game of Thrones to fix that shit. So I decide I'm available to drive this girl to the DCPA, Denver Center for the Performing Arts, just to get out of the apartment. This girl lives directly underneath me, but I've never met her before. She's a solid 8/10, curvy, blonde, about 5 feet 2 and with the goofiest smile you'd ever see. As I'm driving her there, she starts telling me the story of why she's all alone on this chilly pre-Christmas night. Turns out, her ex-boyfriend Scott was supposed to go to this play with her tonight but he's a major asshole. The stories about him start off small enough. He fucked her best friend, lied about it. Basic shit, right? Not even close. Turns out he was dealing drugs from the basement of her old house, like hardcore cocaine and shit, and got her arrested for it. Thankfully she was proven not guilty in court. The evidence was entirely circumstantial, but he had skipped town, so she was left to suffer on her own. She tells me he was abusive, beat her nightly, and tried to rape her before she broke up with him. My sympathy senses are going off the charts for her. She even sheds a few tears, apologizing for spilling her history. She asks if I want to see this show with her. She still has the extra ticket. I, of course, jump at the chance to go on a date with this hot bombshell who's probably definitely out of my league. So I agree. We park about a block away from the DCPA and have to walk the rest of the way. The snow is sprinkling around us like this magical fairy tale shit, and I'm getting serious vibes from her, like I'm totally gonna fuck you tonight if you ask vibes. We get to our seats in the show when she asks me if I want to go backstage to meet the actresses before it starts. That's against the rules, right? Well, girl insists she knows them and it's fine. So she takes me on this shady little path backstage and pulls out a set of keys to unlock the doors. Red flags are going off, yay, but I'm wanting to get laid, and the last thing I wanna do is piss her off. She takes me to the green room and introduces me to this dude called Scott, one of the lead actors. He looks at her and starts freaking the fuck out, which is when she pulls out a fucking knife and stabs him in the gut. That Scott was the same Scott that broke up with her. I got the fuck out of there, called the cops and when everything calmed down, smoked a bowl and googled his name. Turns out, she was the drug dealer and crazy bitch that skipped town. He was her innocent boyfriend who found out and ratted her out to the cops, and she wanted her revenge. She tried to pin the stabbing on me, but when the police interrogated me, they found out all about the trifity that she left in my car before she left. She was actually a monster in disguise. Who knew? Shit was the end of my Uber career. Fuck you. I even scrolled down to the end before editing, but didn't see Loch Ness, so although I was safe, no one's safe from the Loch Ness and its need for trifity. Halfway through I'm thinking this is so well written. These stories mostly end the same goddamn prehistoric way, but some people on Reddit are actually really good storytellers. But I was wrong. Fuck you for drawing me in only to disappoint me. You deserve to be Scott. Love is cursed by monogamy. Edit. Why are people upvoting this? This was supposed to be a reply to the top comment lol. Wait, what's taxi? I only know Uber.